X-Men Dark Phoenix marks the end of the Fox era of X-Men movies. Okay, yeah, technically New Mutants marks the end since it's coming out later, but for all intents and purposes, Dark Phoenix is it, folks. And now we're entering unknown territory with this franchise because if we're being real for a second, this is not going to be the last X-Men movie ever. Marvel and Disney would be foolish not to continue this series in some capacity. But for the first time in almost 20 years, the X-Men are getting something of a reboot. And not a half-assed one where it takes place in the past, but some of the actors are still around, but the timeline's all messed up. No, this is a complete new, fresh start. No longer is the series beholden to the groundwork laid in 2000 by Badman Bryan Singer. No longer do the X-Men have to wear boring black outfits. No longer does Hugh Jackman get to play Wolverine. Okay, that bit is actually very upsetting. We just don't know what Kevin Feige has in store for these characters once he finally gets his hands on them, so to speak. That's pretty exciting. It's also pretty terrifying. But just because I don't know what to expect from the X-Men franchise anymore, that doesn't mean I don't necessarily know what I want to see from the X-Men franchise moving forward. So here are just some ideas that Disney can have for free as to what I think will help their version of the X-Men not only stand out, but possibly be a little bit better. So what do I think Marvel and Disney should do with the X-Men now that they have the movie rights back? Well, I guess we really should think about whether or not they would do anything at all with the X-Men. Just because they have them doesn't mean they're going to use them, but come on. This is the X-Men. Of course they're going to do something with them eventually. Well, for everything that Fox did right with the X-Men films, and to be fair, they did do a lot right, they also got their fair share of things wrong with the X-Men, with the characters and with their universe. So I think fixing the flaws will be enough to set Marvel on the right path to making good X-Men films. Some issues will be simple fixes, others will be a little bit more complicated, but I think overall, looking at the flaws and how to fix them is a great place to start. And why not just get this one out of the way right now? Give them better costumes, more comic book accurate costumes specifically. The X-Men have been stuck wearing some form of black leather since the franchise started back in 2000. Now, to be fair, that wasn't a bad aesthetic choice back then, but it's 2019. By now, we've seen faithful recreations of Iron Man, Spider-Man, Wonder Woman, and many others. Many comic book superheroes have been recreated on the big screen with incredible accuracy, and it's about time that the X-Men got on the same level as well. Any attempts to try and change the overall look of the characters has been either too simplistic or way too short-lived. We've seen teases of more comic book accurate costumes, like at the end of Apocalypse and in a deleted scene for the Wolverine, but that's about it. Also too, for the most part, in all of these films, they don't wear their costumes until the last battle of the movie. For the rest of the film, they're usually just in their street clothes. Even when they're going out and having action scenes, they're just wearing what I'm wearing, basically. Now, overall, giving the X-Men more colorful, more comic book accurate costumes is a small change in the grand scheme of things. I understand that. But I think it's a simple change to signify to audiences that this isn't the same crap you've been seeing for the past 20 years. This is a brand new era for the X-Men. Another easy way that they can signify that this is a brand new era of X-Men movies is just to focus on a completely different cast of characters. Now, I know this might be hard to get your head around. After all, even though the X-Men are probably the most diverse cast of characters in all of comics, even the comic book stories generally focus on a handful of people, the same people that you've seen over and over again. And I'm sure whatever movie Marvel makes about the X-Men, they're gonna use some characters that we've already seen before. That's pretty much inevitable. But if they could, maybe they can focus on characters that we've seen before, but didn't really get the proper screen time, or the screen time that they truly deserve. Like, for example, Kitty Pryde. She is one of the most popular characters in all of X-Men comics, and yet in the movies, she's really been relegated to just cameos. Even in The Last Stand and Days of Future Past, where she had relatively big roles, they really weren't as big as everyone else's in the cast. She was just a supporting character. So you can promote her to lead, and that would be a quick and easy way to change things up, even if it's just changing things up a little bit. Or how about Gambit? He had a tacked on role in X-Men Origins Wolverine, and Channing Tatum has been trying to play him for years with no success, so now might be the time to pull the trigger and add Gambit to an X-Men film. A team film. Don't give him a solo film. That'd be a bad idea. Or how about Banshee? He was my favorite character in First Class, only for him to be killed off in between films. What the hell? And on the villain side, you have even more untapped potential with characters like Mojo, Arcade, Wendigo, Cassandra Nova, so many other weird and interesting characters that would give about a nice change of pace from what we've seen previously. I understand that they might have to throw in a character or two from the previous series that was very well established, Storm, Cyclops, what have you. But maybe try and stay away from Mystique and Beast. They got a lot of screen time in the past 4 movies, and I think it's time they got a break. And now might be the time to officially say goodbye to Professor X and Magneto on the big screen, at least for now. That may sound bizarre to you. How can you do a movie without Professor X and Magneto? But you can do X-Men stories without those characters. Astonishing X-Men by Joss Whedon and John Cassaday didn't have either of those characters, but it is still the best X-Men comic of the past 20 years. And I know it's going to be tempting to want to use Wolverine, but maybe don't. At least not yet. Maybe save him for like a sequel or such. I mean, they didn't use the Joker right away when they rebooted it with Batman Begins. They saved him for the sequel. So give Wolverine a rest. Maybe the 3rd X-Men movie that Marvel or Disney does can finally add him in. What else? Well, this is another idea that I think would be very hard for people to wrap their head around, but I think it would be a great idea if Marvel and Disney focused a lot less on the mutants equal oppressed minority angle. To be clear, it is impossible to ditch this altogether. The civil rights allegory of the X-Men has been there since the original Stan Lee Jack Kirby comics. But it's an idea that the previous movies have almost beaten to death. The original trilogy of X-Men films made that the text of the movie rather than the subtext. And that's fine, but like I said in last week's video, that's not the only story that you can tell with the X-Men. Age of Apocalypse is like a 40-issue odyssey through another dimension. Schism is about Cyclops and Wolverine going to war over how to lead the school going forward. And Onslaught is about Magneto and Professor X fusing to become one person. Basically. Again, referencing Astonishing X-Men, yes, they do touch upon the mutants as civil rights allegory, especially in the beginning, but that's a great example of how it's not the only thing to do with the X-Men. That story also features the X-Men fighting the Danger Room after it goes sentient, the Hellfire Club returning to stop and defeat the X-Men once and for all, and the X-Men traveling to space to fight aliens on another planet. The X-Men go to space a lot. Really, everything that I think the new X-Men film should do can be boiled down to one simple thing. Stop being so GD grounded. The original X-Men film, despite featuring characters that could read minds, control the weather, and shoot lasers out of their face, did everything it could to be steeped in as much realism as possible. There was nothing too outlandish like time travel or a character like Dupe to scare off the normies. And again, that may have been fine back in 2000, but you would think by now the filmmakers would be a little bit more confident and going a bit more outlandish with these outlandish characters. Now, sure, Days of Future Past was pretty outlandish. I mean, that featured a post-apocalyptic future, time travel, and big-ass robots, but even that felt restrained by the previous trappings of the film series. I mean, the X-Men are still wearing boring black costumes, a lot of time was spent on the previously seen characters from the series, and the Sentinels were really only a fraction of the height that they are in the comics. In the comics, they're like 100 feet tall. And then by the time we got to Apocalypse, which also tried to be big and outlandish, it seemed like the film couldn't handle the weight of its own story. And everything that I've seen of Dark Phoenix looks to be like it's repeating the same mistakes. Hell, it's already been confirmed that the final battle for Dark Phoenix was changed in reshoots from a battle in space to a battle on a train. even for the last film in the series, they're too scared to go big. It's being said that this was done so that nobody would compare it to Captain Marvel, which, okay, but Dark Phoenix was supposed to come out last year, and Captain Marvel only came out in March. So if it did come out last year on time, people will be comparing Captain Marvel to Dark Phoenix. I think they just wussed out, honestly. I really think they did. I don't think it's too difficult for Marvel and Disney to go big and weird with the X-Men movies that they're gonna make if and when they do actually make them. This is a studio, after all, that's shown that they're not afraid to do things that would once have been considered too outlandish for mainstream moviegoers. Remember, they gave us Norse mythology, alien invasions, and a talking tree and raccoon before the X-Men ever thought about giving us time travel. It's almost like the way Marvel handled integrating Spider-Man into the Marvel Cinematic Universe. I mean, before Spider-Man Homecoming, before Civil War even, we had two different Spider-Man series. Both were more serious attempts on getting the character on the big screen. Both showed his origin, the Uncle Ben speech. Both even had a Harry Osborn fight. And then when it came time for Spider-Man Homecoming, Marvel made a kids movie about a Peter Parker who was already Spider-Man. And it was great. Sure, some of my suggestions might seem a little bit small, like changing the costumes and the characters, but I think it will go a long way with signifying that this is a brand new era of X-Men films, which is very important. And then they can easily give us a story set in the Savage Land, which again is a place on Earth where dinosaurs still exist. And not only would we be ready for it and okay with it, but we would clearly know that this new series is nothing like the old one. If anything, it has the potential to be so much better. I don't expect Marvel to make an X-Men movie within the next year. Hell, I don't expect them to make one within the next 5 years. But they would be foolish not to go down this route. They've shown us that they're not afraid to go big and weird with their movies. Hell, they have the Eternals on the docket for release real soon. And that's pretty effing weird if you ask me. So I say Marvel, go big with the X-Men. Give us garish costumes. Give us new characters to focus on. The weirder, the better. And maybe put aside the oppression allegory for 1 second and focus more on the bonkers side of the X-Men. Alternate dimensions, secret mutant underground societies, hell, focus on space.
Focus on space, the United States of space.
But what do you guys think Marvel and Disney should do with the X-Men now that they have full control of the franchise again? Do you think they should go big and weird, or do you think they should stay the course with what Fox had been doing with the series beforehand? And what new characters do you want to see in new X-Men films? Let me know down below or anywhere on the internet. Perhaps it is foolish to speculate on such things now when literally nothing has been announced yet, nothing is official, there is no X-Men film in the works after this movie. But then again, what is this show but the foolish ramblings of a 32-year-old child in his basement? Of course, don't forget about the Amazon affiliate links in the description below. Don't forget about Wulff Den Apparel. And don't forget that we have new videos every Tuesday and Wednesday, with Wednesday night at 8 p.m. Eastern being Wulff Den Live. So subscribe to see all of that, like this video, and share with a friend who's excited for what's next with the X-Men movies. This may be the end, but really, it's just the beginning of something else entirely. Thank you all for watching. I will see you next time.